highest court. President Obama described it as justice arriving like a thunderbolt.
And he said unto them, I beheld Satan as lightning fall from heaven.
Our nation was founded on a bedrock principle, that we are all created equal. The project of each generation is to bridge the meaning of those founding words with the realities of changing times. A never-ending quest to ensure those words ring true for every single American. Progress on this journey often comes in small increments. Sometimes 2 steps forward, 1 step back, propelled by the persistent effort of dedicated citizens. And then sometimes there are days like this, when that slow, steady effort is rewarded with justice that arrives like a thunderbolt. I vowed to keep up the fight against the so-called Defense of Marriage Act.
The 5-4 decision making same-sex marriage legal everywhere, and supporters were dancing in the streets as one dissenting Supreme Court justice warned of a court that is now a threat to American democracy. In a sweeping 5-4 opinion authored by Justice Anthony Kennedy, the Supreme Court declared same-sex marriage the law of the land, finding a fundamental constitutional right for same-sex couples to marry in all 50 states.
It's my hope that the term gay marriage will soon be a thing of the past, that from this day forward, it will simply be marriage.
Justice Kennedy wrote, quote, under the Constitution, same-sex couples seek in marriage the same legal treatment as opposite-sex couples, and it would disparage their choices and diminish their personhood to deny them this right.
This ruling will strengthen all of our communities by offering to all loving same-sex couples the dignity of marriage across this great land.
All 4 dissenting justices authored their own opinions, including Chief Justice John Roberts. Quote, the majority's decision is an act of will, not legal judgment. The right it announces has no basis in the Constitution or this court's precedent, adding, just who do we think we are? As a senator, Democrat Hillary Clinton defended the traditional definition of marriage, but today the 26th contender lauded the landmark victory and praised the LGBT community for changing hearts on the issue. The 2016 GOP field roundly denounced the ruling and voiced concerns about protections for those with religious objections to same-sex marriage, despite Justice Kennedy's emphasis on First Amendment protections for, quote, religious organizations and persons. In his dissent, Justice Samuel Alito suggested today's ruling leaves traditional marriage supporters in a tenuous position. Quote, I assume that those who cling to old beliefs will be able to whisper their thoughts in the recesses of their homes. But if they repeat those views in public, they will risk being labeled as bigots and treated as such by governments, employers, and schools.
One of the cornerstones of the Constitution is the freedom of religion, the freedom of speech, and the right of conscience of all Americans. And we're hopeful that that cornerstone, notwithstanding today's decision, remains.
The Archdiocese of Washington issued a statement today saying the court's decision will not change its definition of marriage as between one woman and one man, yet acknowledged the Catholic Church will soon face a situation in which its teaching and practices, quote, may be perceived to conflict with civil law.
Welcome to the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. Tonight, a remarkable sight at the White House, which is aglow in the colors of the rainbow, celebrating what the administration calls a new chapter in the history of American civil rights. Critics say 5 unelected and unaccountable judges have overstepped their authority by assuming the power to create new fundamental rights and compelling the country to redefine the institution of marriage. Others say this is a seminal moment in the civil rights movement of our time. Well, my next guest says this court decision will, quote, never be accepted. Tony Perkins is the president of the Family Research Council. Tony, what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, Megyn, let's look at, for instance, the issue of abortion back in 1973. The court said it was going to take this issue off the table. It wasn't going to be a political issue. 42 years later, it's an issue in every election from president on down. And I mean, look how divided the court was. They weren't just divided, they were deeply divided, and the dissent The dissenting opinions that were written were very strong. In fact, the justices wrote their own so they could express themselves. That's reflective of where the nation is on this, because it's so intertwined with religious freedom. And we've already seen that. You've reported on it. Todd Starnes at Fox News has these stories weekly about how faith is in collision with this agenda that the president has embraced and the court now has endorsed.
What do you make of, the people who, you've heard Professor Turley reference it, that say if you oppose this ruling, if you have questions about it, you must be a bigot. And, the thing that you're up against, Tony, is you look at, for example, the plaintiff in the case today, a dear man who was standing out in front of the Supreme Court today, honoring his partner. And we have the soundbite. Let me play it for you.
Most importantly, I'd like to thank John for loving me, for making me a better man, and for giving me something worth fighting for. I love you. This is for you, John. Thank you.
And folks say, how can you deny him the right to marry the person he loves?
Look, no one denies them the right to live as they please, living with one another. But I would encourage people to go to freetobelieve.com and look at all of the stories of people like Aaron and Melissa Klein, who used to have a bakery, but after $135,000 fines for simply not wanting to be a part of a same-sex wedding, were driven out of business. There is a reason that people have deeply held beliefs. Look, religion is so entwined with who we are as a nation. I mean, that's why we have this nation. It was founded upon that freedom to believe, the freedom to live your life according to your beliefs. That's at stake here. And for Christians, for evangelicals, those who follow the Bible, this is not an issue that can be negotiated away. I mean, Jesus himself in Matthew 19 said, have you not read from the beginning that God created them male and female? And for that reason, a man will leave his mother and father, cling to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. Jesus
so what do you
spoke
do with that,
specifically to
Tony?
what marriage was.
What do you do with that now? I mean, in the face of the Supreme Court decision, obviously I'm sure you'd like to have it reversed or have it overturned by a later court, but where does the battle go now for a group like yours and people who are defending this view of marriage?
Well, for instance, you were talking with Jonathan about where this may lead. I think you look at the Solicitor General, Donald Verrilli, and what he said in the oral arguments, that this was going to be an issue for religious institutions like colleges and universities and other religious organizations, not initially the churches. I think they'll leave them alone. They'll be the last they go after. But they'll take away the tax exemption, the accreditation. They'll take away grants. There will be an effort to force people to conform. We're seeing it in the corporate world. We'll see it in government. We'll see it in the public square. But I'm just here to say, Megan, that this is not going to go away. Just as Roe v. Wade did not solve the abortion issue, this is not going to solve the issue of what marriage is. Marriage preceded this court. It preceded this country. It has been around since the very beginning, and it's here to stay. The natural definition of man and woman, of marriage, is a man and a woman, and it's going to remain that way through the end of time.
Tony, good to see you. Thanks for being here tonight.
All right, Megan.